I was more nervous to tell them I was autistic at work than I was coming out. Hi, I'm Brett the Audi Boss, and on this channel we talk about ADHD and autism in the workplace. I have over 12 years leadership training and experience, and I have a formal diagnosis of autism and ADHD. Time of recording, it's Pride Month, and I always like to do a video or some content around the topic of being neuroqueer or being queer and neurodivergent. What I want to talk about in this video is how similar coming out late was to getting a late diagnosis. What we're seeing in the data is there's a huge overlap between being LGBTQ and getting a late diagnosis, or being LGBTQ and just having autism or ADHD. There's a huge overlap. There's a huge connectivity there. The two are completely and always will be interconnected for me. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you'll see that I talked about a video where I was raised in a high control religion. You've also seen maybe videos where I've talked about high masking and how that kind of kept me in the closet, and how I really feel and relate to the term of neuroqueer. This is a high masking topic for me. I'm in this weird position where I love consuming queer content, I love creating queer content, and I love talking about my queer identity, but it's also one of those areas where I was raised in such a high control religion to not talk about these things that it can sometimes be a little bit harder for me to talk about this and mask a little bit more than I might normally do. Because I had such strict protocols in how I was raised through that high control religion, that it was difficult for me to recognize those feelings. Not only that, but also with alexithymia and delayed processing and high masking and a little bit of pathological demand avoidance. All of these things kind of stirred the cocktail of not necessarily being willing to understand hard and confusing feelings when I was growing up and when I was a young adult and even into my 20s. Because the truth is I didn't come out until I was in my mid to early 30s. Even then, I had to be in an extremely safe environment with people giving me a real guide of language and understanding. Terms I didn't understand, phrasing I didn't understand. I didn't understand what it meant to be bisexual, even in my 30s. It took all those years to get the literal concept to land inside my head, for it to process, for that delayed processing to allow it in, to understand that it was real, to understand that it was me, to understand where those feelings were coming up, and how I struggled with so many of those feelings of trying to understand, well, what is this feeling? How do I process that feeling? And it's hard to process those feelings when you have alexithymia, because for me, as I've noted in a lot of my videos, when I have an uncomfortable feeling, or a feeling I can't understand, or a feeling that is just different or off for me, that's not a part of the normal routine, those feelings to me make me want to fight. They make me want to push those feelings away, run away from those feelings, or try to act like those feelings don't exist. I try to get those feelings out of me as much as I can. That's for any feeling that comes up for me. When it's something that's uncomfortable or I don't understand, it can be an angry feeling, it can be an uncomfortable feeling, it could be anything. So when I started to have feelings for different friends or different things that were coming up, or I had attractions I couldn't quite understand, I was really scared of those feelings. And the high control religion made darn sure that those feelings were things that I shouldn't be feeling in the first place. So then I felt really guilty, and I felt really wrong, and I felt really scared. And I also felt that I had to really control those things, because while I was feeling all those feelings, growing up, I was also being made fun of. Back in those days, being called queer was a negative term, the late 80s and early 90s. And I got made fun of for being different a lot. I got made fun of for being gay when I didn't even understand what that was. I was being made fun of for so many things, for being effeminate, or all these different things that I did not understand. And so I would mask really hard to try to act a certain way, to push those feelings down. When I got into college, I had really close friends that were like, come on, it's there. Just reach for it. Just accept that you're queer, accept that you're bi or gay or something, and just come out already. And that's one of the other problems, is that we have, albeit supportive people, but when they're kind of pressuring you to do that thing that you've been so scared of for your entire life, to come out and to talk about and to feel those feelings and understand those things, and you don't process, because I have a wall up that's fighting, as opposed to accepting that and letting it in. I really was putting out a strong resistance to protect myself, to protect my autonomy. I knew I was feeling those feelings, but I couldn't quantify them. I couldn't put them into words. I couldn't make sense of them. And I was so scared of them, and I thought I was going to get in trouble. I was in this constant state of fear, thinking, I'm going to get in trouble, I'm going to get in trouble, I'm going to get in trouble. I don't know by who. I could have been God, it could have been something else, but I didn't know, I didn't understand. So it took more years for me to get settled. When I was in my first formal job, it didn't feel like a safe place to be out. It didn't feel like a place that I could understand or take time to process or sit with a supportive community that could kind of help me process and understand all those different things. And again, I would just sort of push those feelings down. I was less scared of them. I was more comfortable with them in my 20s, but I just couldn't quite figure out where to go. Then in my 30s, I was finally in a job that I could completely feel safe with. I could completely, let my guard down. I was in a huge queer community at work. Everybody was celebrating being queer, and I could finally just go, okay, I understand this now. I see more positive representation. I understand different things. I'm hearing everybody's coming out story. I'm listening, I'm understanding, I'm relating. And the more I could relate and the more I could understand, the less I had to mask, the more I could let my mask down or off, depending on how that would work. And the more I could kind of process and understand and accept those feelings. And that was kind of a golden time for hearing more information about being bisexual. We had more stories coming out. We had more people talking about their identity. We had more representation happening, more positive representation happening. I want to pause there for just a moment and talk about why safety is so important right there. I mean, it might seem obvious, but having a safe place, having a safe work environment, a safe friend, a safe colleague, a safe person, it creates an atmosphere where the defensiveness can come down, the tension can come down, the safety to talk, all of that. When that safety is in place, defensiveness comes down, your nervous system can relax a little bit more. And then processing can happen at that point. Now, this is a standard thing for a lot of those of us who are neurodivergent. We need to be able to have that safe place so we can regulate our systems, we can regulate our nervous system, we can regulate, because when we've got all that stuff built up and defending and all this different stuff and all these barriers up, I can't process when I'm, defensive and in those modes and all those different things. It's like a clog in a pipe, and only a little bit is getting through. And once you remove that clog by lowering the defensiveness, letting the nervous system regulate and let all that stuff happen, that deep breath, everything kind of process again. And it took me years to get to that point where I could let go of those anxieties and those fears and all those different things and be in a safe place where I can unmask for myself. Because there's the fear of unmasking. Even if you are subconsciously masking and you don't even know you're masking, which I didn't know I was masking. I didn't understand that concept until I got to the place where I understood my neurodivergence, where I understood ADHD and I understood autism. It wasn't until I went through that part of the journey that I could understand why those defenses were there, why masking was so strong, and why masking was such a defense mechanism for me. But having a safe work environment where things can feel normalized and things can feel, okay, made a huge difference. Having that safe environment then created friendships and created relationships and created abilities to sort of go, okay, I see myself and I can regulate myself. I read an amazing book where the main character was in a high control religion and was also bisexual and was struggling with sexual identity. And I thought, oh my God, that's it. Perfect. That was my exact lived experience. I could finally see myself on the page and I finally got it and I understood. Yep, there I am. I can finally accept that I'm bisexual. And then there was a huge amount of embarrassment. Then I had to go back to all the people that were in college begging me to come out at a time that I wasn't ready. All these people in my life, they're going, why now? What happened now? And then you have to sort of explain all these different things. And I felt like I really had to defend myself. I felt like I really had to prove something, or I had to defend myself, or I had to explain it to a lot of people. Not too dissimilar from getting my autism and my ADHD diagnosis. I felt like, there was a while there where I sort of gaslit myself about whether or not it was really true. And it was the same with autism and ADHD. I had to sort of remind myself, yes, you are. There's so much data. There's so much reasoning. There's so much stuff there. People who aren't don't spend all that time wondering if they are. And somebody said that to me once. I think it was another content creator. And I finally went, oh, yeah, that makes more sense. Yes. No one, if you're straight, you don't think about that. If you're neurotypical, you don't think about that. Those struggles don't exist if you're neurotypical. If you're straight, you don't think about that at all. So when I had that, I kind of was able to sort of let that go. And so in my 30s, I came out, I started to tell people, I started to tell people at work, and the more I was on that journey, the more access to understanding. And then when I started to understand ADHD and autism at that point, I was more open-minded. I was more welcoming to understanding and processing and understanding that. And so then as I'm going on that journey, I'm going, okay, this is different for me. Okay, I have to learn all this stuff. As I'm going through that journey, it felt like I was kind of coming out all over again. And then, a few years later, I then had to come out with autism and ADHD. And so there's a huge correlation there for me. They are very different in many different ways, and being high masking in particular, I still feel so strongly that being high masking was a huge reason why it took me so long to come out later in life. I will always get back to that. And the truth is, both involve grieving. I had to grieve coming out so much later in life and sort of accepting that a lot of opportunities were behind me and that a lot of moments were behind me in terms of things that I couldn't do because I was older. Finding out I was autistic and had ADHD is that I now realized on that side of it that I had tools and strategies and things that would have made my life easier earlier in life. But the difference in both of those, this is where they're similar but different. A lot of the tools and the strategies and the knowledge that we have today about autism and ADHD, we didn't have 20 years ago. A lot of the research that we've received and gained over the last 20 years has made it easier for me to function today with the tools and the strategies that we have. We didn't have access to that 20 years ago. The difference is 20 years ago, being bisexual and being queer, all that information was coming through. I was just too stubborn to take it. I was too stubborn to understand it and to process and to let it in and accept myself and accept that journey and to go down that journey. I was too scared and I was too nervous and I was too scared, so scared. And that's why I feel so strongly about videos like this that sort of explain that it does get better and that there is a path forward and that, there is opportunity on the other side of coming out and having a late diagnosis at the same time. I was able to actually unmask a little bit more at work when I came out. Before I knew I was autistic and had ADHD, I was able to sort of unmask myself a little bit more. I was able to be a little bit more myself, which is why when I finally got to understanding masking and unmasking and what those were, to me, unmasking felt like coming out. To me, that was something that I was like, oh, I can be doing that more regularly. That's getting in touch with myself. That's understand my likes and my dislikes. That's understanding myself in a variety of different ways I didn't understand before. Very similar to when I came out and I finally accepted my identity and sort of understood, okay, here's who I am. Here's what I like. Here's what I don't like. Here's what I need. And here's what I don't need. It's also why Heated Rivalry, certainly that first episode feels so relatable because the character of Shane Hollander is finally giving in to what he is feeling and when he's finally understanding himself and he's finally just being alone in those moments to have what he's craving and desiring so badly. That's what unmasking looks like. That's what unmasking when you have finally accepted your queer identity feels like and looks like in that beautiful moment. I love that moment in the first episode of Heated Rivalries because it is so relatable. There's just such a moment there where he just releases that tension and gives in to himself. And it's just a beautiful moment. I love that moment. I hope some of this has been helpful. I hope this has made sense. If you'd like to know more information about my coaching or my workbook or other projects that I'm working on, check out the description below. Be sure to check out the AuDHD shop if you want to know more about the workbook that I've created to sort of help you tap into your sparks at work and understand better what your drains are. Check that out for more information. Be sure to like and subscribe and be sure to follow for more. Thanks for watching. Happy Pride Month. And if there's topics or questions that you'd like to know more about, let me know in the comments below. And if you're also neuroqueer, tell me about your experience in the comments. I would love to know your relationship to masking, unmasking, if you came out late, what the correlation was between getting your late diagnosis and finding out your identity. Tell me in the comments below. I would love to hear your story. Thanks for watching.